All right. Well, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the January 25th, 26th edition of the Notary Governance Call. This is the second one of 2022. This is recorded live. This video will be posted to YouTube. Thank you for everyone who tuned in with us live as we go through it. Let's take a look at the agenda for this week. We are going to just briefly cover who Deep, Galen, and myself are. If this is your first time on the call or you're new, we'll have an opportunity for you to post it in chat so we can just say hello and make sure we're kind of getting you plugged into the best ways possible. We're also going to be talking about metrics, quick overview of what's in the pipeline, how we're doing week over week, and the election, which is coming up. So we'll talk about the dates, we'll talk about some of the changes to the rubrics, and we have some good news, some quality of life improvements that we put into the system, which we'll talk in detail, and some quick updates. And as always, we'll save time at the end for any community issues that you want to have. If you're watching this on YouTube or catching up, feel free to check the link in the bottom. You'll see the link to the Notary Governance repo. Feel free to tune in or add any comments you may want there, and we'll make sure to include it just in case you're not able to join us live. So with that, oh no, I'm gone. It's Galen, Deep, and myself. I guess I'm international man of mystery aside from this recorded video. But what we are is the three people that will help you with any issues as you come on. And it's just good to see you guys again. Oh, well, that's kind of a cool transition. I'm just going to move right through. Not sure. That's high tech. I see a couple names on the call. So if you are just joining us for the first time, no pressure, of course, but see ya. Love to have you just write in chat like, hey, I'm with this organization. I've been on the call before, my first time. Anything you might want to share goes a long way to just kind of make sure that we're reaching out to you. So with that, let's dive into some really cool metrics. All right. So this is the metrics that we have posted. This is at the Fil Plus. The link's at the bottom there if you want to see this for yourself. We'll also post it online. The big things that I want to call out is that there was no change to average time to data cap, which is kind of great because we did really good after the holiday season. It looks like that momentum's holding forward. And we're still about that 1 day, 19 hours from the time that the data cap is like average. The average time to first response, we lost an hour, but you know what? It's dark, it's cold, it's January. So if we have to put an hour on the books anytime, I think this would be the month to do it. And then the amount of data cap, we're still increasing at about 0.13 every month. So the big takeaway from this metric is nothing dramatically has changed to the network. We're still in the same times. We're still doing great as far as like our turnover goes. If you have any questions on this data or anything with the metrics, feel free to post it in the chat and we'll make sure to call it out or talk about it specifically as we go on. So with that, let's take a look at the notary activity. And with this, it's going to be myself, Deep, and Galen kind of talking. So I'll start it off with a little bit on the metrics and when we have open issues. So right off the bat, we have 7 multi-sig requests that are waiting in the Notary Governance repo. So if you wanted to be like king or queen of multitasking and tab over there right now, there's some awesome signatures waiting for you if you want to take a look. And then also on the right-hand side, you can see kind of the foundation of what Textile built for what will become the Notary Leaderboard, and we'll talk about this on the call. But we're doing great as far as our days to average grant. Thank you so much to those of you that are really participating in this and really getting on those grants and making that time turnaround. So we'll be looking at this. This is kind of the foundation. So nothing dramatic to call out. There are a few open issues. If you have some time to sign today, greatly appreciate as we go forward. So with that, let's take a look at the notary elections that are coming up. So we talked about this on the January 11th call, and we kind of solicited feedback from you on the call, and then as well as the repo, as far as the tentative dates for going. So this is that last call for feedback on what you may be thinking for the notary elections that are going to come up. This is the 3rd round of elections, and the way we're kind of looking at this based off feedback from the last call and then on Slacks is the application period will open up on February 21st and will remain open for 2 weeks. Through March 4th. After that, we're going to take about 2 weeks for scoring and follow-up questions. So if there's anything that's ambiguous in your application or we need more clarification on, we'll have 2 full weeks to reach out with you. That's March 7th through 18th. And then we'll have the final determinations based off the scoring rubrics on March 22nd. I'm going to pause here, so feel free to comment if you're on the call or on text. Just kind of like, is this date makes sense with everybody on the call? If you have feedback, let us know. If you're thumbs up, thumbs up. Sweet. I think that's enough. If you have any kind of comments or any kind of conflicts and you want to flag it, the repo link is right here. Please leave us your feedback as always. Love to kind of communicate that as we drive forward as a community on this. But it looks like these will be the dates that we're moving forward with, pending any input for the second round of this governance call later today. So with that, let's take a look at some of the rubric changes that have been suggested for this upcoming election cycle. The first one got published last night. If you haven't had a chance to see it in the repo, here's a screenshot. And what essentially this change proposal is saying is that in the second round of elections, we had a category called scale of allocation. And this was designed to measure notaries' participation in the program and their engagement based off the volume that they were approving. What we found was that volume of approving doesn't really measure how much you're participating in the program, how much engagement you are. And some of those engagements are like attending this call or answering questions on Slack or being available for any kind of questions that may come up without the community. So we thought about this and we got Signal and we rewrote it, and we're have it pending for your community input, is engagement in program. And so rather than looking at just the total amount of data cap, it would establish SLAs based off time engaging in the program. So like, are you on Slack? If someone writes you, do you write back in 1 day or 1 month? Are you actually in those repos commenting? And we're rating that based off that level of engagement that we're hoping that everyone brings to the project. So if you have thoughts on this, if you have feedback, here's the link, issue 391 in the Notary Governance repo. Again, we'll leave this open probably through the end of week, pending any other feedback that goes through with this, just to make sure the election moves forward. We'll probably close this issue. Actually, we'll definitely be closing this issue by the end of this week. We'll say like a Saturday soft close. So again, if you have any issues on like this way that participation will be scored in the third round of elections, this link is here for feedback. If you'd like to add any comments now, I'll pause if anybody'd like to share any thoughts or feedback on this before we go on. Great. The chat's always open. So again, if you have any feedback, feel free to come back to it. With that,
I was going to jump in here. Just say like there have been a couple different conversations around like service level agreements, and so there've been some like discussion topics. And this is not necessarily. I just want to like clarify. This is not necessarily saying if you apply to be a notary, you know, and you submit an application to be at a lower service level, that you know, are doing different things as a notary. This is just a way to help us when we assess all of the applications. You know, we want to get people that are going to be able to be committed, and we want people that are honest with how much they can be committed. And so this is a factor going into the selection process. And then it is something for us to kind of look at and point to going forward in subsequent round of elections. You know, if on this election, a new community member applies and says they're going to be, you know, level 4, level 5, but then a couple months in, they have fallen off the map and they're not performing at that level, and they submit another application, we can say, hey, like in your first application, you said you were going to be engaged at, you know, more than 8 hours a week. We didn't really see that. Let's help us understand. So this is also just a way for us to kind of have a conversation starting point with some of those notaries. And it's, if a notary is only able to do an hour a week or less, like that's not the end of the world. There's not a requirement that every notary is putting in 8 hours of engagement. It means, you know, you're coming to this call or you're watching it, you're jumping into some discussions and you sign a few things. It could be 5 minutes a day every week. You can still be performing as a highly functioning notary with that level of engagement. So just wanted to add that in.
Great. Thanks for that, Gavin. I don't see any other mics unmuting, so if we want to come back to this, feel free to just interrupt it. Let's take a look. Deep, can you kind of talk us through this next one here?
Oops, I was muted. Sorry about that. Yes, definitely can. So there's actually two other modifications, issues that I opened up yesterday that I'd like to recommend. The first of which is much more basic. It's just like pure like usability, quality of life improvements where like I fixed some typos to the rubric, rearranged some rows, got some feedback from Galen and Kira and adjusted stuff. So that's issue 393. Main things there like use case wasn't spelled correctly or consistently, or some capitalization was off here and there. Some spaces were missing. We just had like some cleanup didn't need to be done. And so I expect this one to be relatively not controversial. But yeah, please, if you're a notary, take a look, give me a thumb at least so that we can proceed and make sure that like we're moving forward in a way that isn't surprising to you and like is supportive of your understanding the process and the general sort of like where we're at with notary scoring and notary rubrics. The second one is significantly more complicated. And so we should definitely talk through that one. Charles, thank you for the thumb. I meant a thumb on GitHub so that we have audit trail as well. So please send me your thumb on the GitHub issue. But yeah, do you want to pop up on that, Kira, if you don't mind? Awesome. Yes. So let's talk about this. You might need to zoom in a little. Amazing. Okay, cool. So I just want to talk through the current situation and then we'll chat about the proposed recommendation. But basically, the final allocation amount today is calculated based on a formula. Where the formula sort of creates like an allocation score ranking, which is a combination of 50% of your past track record as a notary, 30% of your reputation and network alignment. So that's called like the weighted notary leveling. It's a combination of your reputation in the network or your reputation in the ecosystem, as well as sort of the uniqueness of your application and also like your long-term network exposure and alignment. So whether or not you work in a company that's like Filecoin specific, or if you hold a lot of tokens and therefore you're like overexposed on stake. So that's 30% of the weight. And then 20% of it is concreteness of allocation plan. And then this is actually minned with the scale of allocation, which means that your notaries end up requesting for a scale of allocation that puts them in a cell that's at least as high as your estimated notary leveling, plus your track record, plus your allocation plan done, like grouped in this manner, which creates a really interesting incentive because what we saw in past phases was that notaries actually would just put a really, really high number in terms of the scale of allocation. Like, I'll allocate 10 Pebby bytes, even though obviously that's was and is still probably infeasible. And Charles, this is specific to like direct notary allocation. And so like when notaries are doing like 10 Debbie bytes at a time to a notary, not the end, it's not realistic in like a 6-month period or even like a year period to do 10,000 of those or 1,000 of those. We only have 1,000 clients in Filecoin Plus today. And so it created a weird thing where like some people were actually scoring higher because of this, or we're trying to score higher using this. And so there's a couple of things like that I think are wrong with this. Like, firstly, I think that it doesn't weigh the concreteness of the allocation plan enough. And so part of why we did that initially, at least from my understanding, was because there was a lot of similarities in people's allocation plans, and people were copy pasting a lot across applications. And there's also not a great understanding of what high quality execution as a notary looked like. 1 year into the program, I think as a group, we have a much better understanding of what that is. Like it makes a lot more sense to say, oh, like something is tracked on GitHub or not, or something is tracked on email or not. And like several notary organizations like 1475 even have like websites and databases of like all the data cap allocations that they made. And so there's a much higher degree of execution and a much higher standard that is being set as a precedence, at least for existing notaries. And so there should be some reward put in there, or there should be an incentive to continue improving that. And part of that is because I think as we evolve this notary role from being less of a gatekeeper and more of a guardian, the due diligence expectations over time will probably be higher. And I don't mean that in terms of the amount of time that would be spent on it, but I mean that in terms of cases in which we went wrong or trusted a client that wasn't trustworthy, then the amount of work that would be required to figure that out and not make that mistake again will probably have required a higher baseline of like the audit trail that you left behind as a notary. And so I wanted to find some way to increase weight for that. So recommending that as like one of the first changes. The second is the track record being 50%, I don't think that correctly also weighs incentives for notaries to perform extremely well or at an extremely high caliber when they have been elected as a notary. And you'll see the change below once we chat about like what I'm recommending on that front. And then the last is effectively like if we had to pick between trading off against weighted notary leveling or like track record to give more weight to allocation plan. It's kind of hard to figure out because you don't really want to trade away from like long-term network alignment, and you don't want to trade away from the high quality past performance. And so, Kira, if you don't mind scrolling down a little bit, like what I'm actually recommending is that we make 3 big changes. So the first is we adjust the weight of the concreteness of allocation plan to 40%. So that makes it the most important factor out of the 3 factors in like that first part of the math. The second is that we actually switch scale of allocation with track record in the formula. So this is the biggest change by far. So what this means is now your scale of allocation, or if assuming 391, I think, or 392, whichever one that was recommending using scale of allocation swapped as engagement in program, that one now impacts the way in which your total like application is scored, which makes a lot more sense because as a net new notary, that's where like your math is coming in because you obviously don't have a track record. And then for an existing notary, it effectively says that if you performed at an extremely high baseline and like we set good expectations for like high quality notary execution, then you should be like rewarded for that and incentivized for that. And like the main thing there is that you can effectively continue being a notary and be rewarded, assuming that there's not like several net new applications that score much higher than you. It reduces the bar for you to reapply. And that's good for us because it means that notaries that are performing extremely well can continue performing extremely well. Like where we are in the network today, we want to have lots of notaries and we want lots of engaged notaries and high performing notaries. And so we set a high bar for how we calculate track record, and we let people use like a max function on the track record. Then it guarantees that they will score like what they could have scored last time. And so it enables people that have shown like at least at some point shown long-term network alignment, probably are still network aligned, are still interested in serving as a notary. It gives them an opportunity to continue doing that with a lower bar, assuming that over time they've proven themselves. And to me, this feels like a similar mentality shift to what we're pushing to clients as well, right? Which is, as a client, we gave you a chance. After we gave you a chance, you proved yourself as a trustworthy client. So we should stop questioning you that much over time. We should let you continue working until we see something wrong. And I kind of was trying to apply that to notaries as well, which was like we gave a notary a chance. The notary did extremely well, held themselves to a really high bar, a really high standard of execution. We watched them as a community over a period of time. And then the time came for the next round of elections. And it doesn't make sense to be like, oh, well, like rewrite this entire application. And oh, this time it was just slightly sloppier than a bunch of other people, or you copy pasted your old application, but everybody else like did a new thing that looked better. And so too bad, you won't get to be a notary again. And so that's like the motivation behind that change. And then, so in order to make that tenable, I also had to switch the function. Instead of it being a min function, it was a max, which meant that either like they're scoring extremely highly on their track record, and that's what's pulling them through, or they're going based on like the rest of the application being extremely compelling. And the reason that works is because the track record is capped based on the amount of data cap that's actually being allocated. So 0 to 100 PB right now gets you a 2. And 100 plus gets you a 3, and then there's like tiers in the rubric, and those tiers are determined by like a max allocation limit that's also taking into account your stake exposure to the network. And so theoretically, as a notary, even if you score extremely well, if you're a net new notary, you're capped at a certain amount, and most of the notaries today are either capped at 10 PB or 100 PB, but you're capped at one of those based on like all your other factors and your ability to engage in the program. And then what that does is it then puts a cap on how high your track record score can be. So realistically, all of you current notaries are going to score between a 2 and a 4. So each of you serving at a PB will probably be a 4. And nobody's actually given out an entire PB probably at this point, other than maybe Fenbushi, maybe 1475. That's TBD. But basically, that's the way in which you get a 2, 3, and a 4. And like usually, what we've seen is you need to be between a 2 and a 3 to get elected or re-elected as a notary. And so it gives highly performing notaries a chance to get re-elected much more simply. Now, I think that does open ourselves up to a little bit of risk. And so that's what I sort of added this like additional considerations and ideas at the bottom. The first is, instead of like taking the raw track record number, we could take like a track record like -1 number. That would mean that like you shouldn't continue just getting the same allocation just because, I don't know, maybe like we don't have a high enough of standard. We don't want to like force notaries to execute at such a high level. We'd rather just let them keep growing, and the way to do that would be to reduce like the how much we worry about it. And so as a community, we could just say, oh, like track record -1 is like the second part of that function, and that way they still have to submit a very high quality application. But it's reflected that if they don't, there's still a probability by which they'll become like a notary. There's also a second bullet, which I think is much more important, which is we should take this opportunity, if we do make this change, to much more concretely define what it means to be a well-performing notary. So if a notary is putting in the work to deserve and earn high reputation in the network, like it should be clear how they did that, what they did in order to earn that, and they should be rewarded for it. And so some examples of this could be like actually very high degree of follow through on the allocation plan from the applications, like how they distributed data cap, how they did due diligence, and like you can see that audit trail in all the applications that have come to them. Or we could, and I think actually, to be honest, would be like high responsiveness, like TTD less than 3 days. Like that's a program goal that we've talked about for a while. That should just be like executable on a per notary basis. Slack responses in less than 1 day, etc. Or measurements of like engagement in the community, like are you coming to governance calls, or are you participating in issues and discussions like on GitHub, or engaging potential clients in Slack, or helping further the conversation in Slack, like some kind of measure of that. But like a combination of these factors is probably required to be like, yes, this is like a very good high quality execution notary, and therefore they deserve like a good score on track record. And so that, yeah, just wanted to put this forward. I talked a lot, sorry about that. Hopefully some of it made sense. If it didn't make sense, please ask me questions now. If you're here, if you're watching the recording, hit up issue 394 and please drop a comment or drop your feedback. But yeah, from those of you in the room, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Hi. So yeah, I got 2 questions. So the first one is how to measure some of the scale that you mentioned, like the responsiveness of the on the Slack. Because like for some of the requirements we get, they are like a direct message, right? And I'm not sure like how you guys can like calculate that. And also for the like time to data gap, like we so there are some like applications on our side, but we do require like applicants to like send us the email including those materials, required materials, but some of them like just didn't like send it to us, so we just wait the applications to be closed automatically. So I just want to know like how to measure this kind of.
Yeah, so I think the second one is easier to answer, which is like, how do we deal with applicants that like created latency on their end? I think we just like our math for TTD like should take into account applications that were successful and not just all applications theoretically. And I think it sort of does that, at least on Andrew Hill's tracker and on the leaderboard that we're building, where sort of it only takes from the subset, like when an issue is closed out. And so I think it's okay for us to just get significantly more aggressive about when we close issues. As opposed to like waiting around for a client for like 2 weeks. So that's a behavior shift that I think makes sense, right? Like if a client just like makes an issue and then you ask them a bunch of questions and then they don't say anything, then like we should just leave it open. The other thing we could do actually is we could look at like time to first response. So this is something we actually measure already, where we could see how long it takes for the notary to react to an incoming issue. And maybe we use that instead of like overall TDD, because sometimes like in your case, I know that you're helping like clients that are doing like significant transitions, like on their like business strategy and their technical strategy, which takes time, right? Like if they're going to send you an encrypted data sample, it's going to take some time to show up in the mail. And we don't want to create like weird incentives that make that process more complicated. And frankly, like speeding up the manual allocation path probably matters slightly less, because part of that is like the business development side of Filecoin. And so I think this is a pretty good call out. Like maybe it's better to use like time to first response as opposed to overall TTD for how you'd want to measure good notary behavior. On the Slack front, I think this one's actually kind of anecdotal, maybe a little bit subjective. And so maybe we should talk about how it could be more objective. But to give you a very concrete example, like K-Ray has been doing a bunch of deep dives with several like notaries over the last couple of months. And he's basically got a graph now, which is like I pinged every notary and like this percentage of them responded to me in like the same day or the same week. And then this percentage of them responded to me after the second ping. And then this large percent of them have still not responded to me like a month later or whatever. And so that's, I think, really where it comes in, which is like, if we don't know how to reach you, right? Like if you're not like looking at GitHub, you're not looking at your email notifications from GitHub, and you're not looking at Slack, then there's no way for this community to actually reach you, because we don't all work in the same office. We all are effectively a distributed team, right? Among us as a community, we all work individually at our own homes. We have other jobs, and then we come in here and we try to make this program a success. And so it's important to have confidence that when the time comes, there's actually ability to reach out, right? Like, for example, we had cases where some notaries were starting to run out of data cap, and in the past they had to like push that application to a different notary. But if you can't even reach that notary, then like what's the point of having them? And so that's why I think that factor starts to become a little bit important. And so maybe we need to come up with better ways to measure it, or maybe we need to like have more consistent Slack activity that is recorded, or it's just anecdotal. Like it's K-Ray who's doing all this like individual pinging, being like, you know what, I didn't hear from you for 2 weeks when I tried to reach out to you. That's not good. Can you please like improve that, or like enable me to reach out to you when needed? But yeah, I'd love to hear, your reactions to that, or if you have any suggestions based on this.
Okay, so I don't have any suggestion right now, but I also have another question. Is that the question like I mentioned in like earlier discussion, that because of the the Chinese government's policy on the mining, so the number of applicants drops dramatically for the past few months. And yeah, it's kind of like a recovery right now, but we didn't have that many demand as the past. So, and we're clearly cannot like use up all the like one petabyte data cap allocation right now. So yeah, I'm not sure like how it will go in like in the future, or like are we going to take more like data cap like from maybe outside grid China, maybe from like the whole Asia region, or maybe this is a direct kind of like different question to the scoring rubric.
Yeah, that's I think that's a slightly different question, but I think it's a very valid point. Like it's probably worth talking through like how that affects. Like in the past, we used to do like per region based scoring, right? And then we used to do a per region target, and then like pick a number of notaries based on that. And maybe we just need to change the way we're approaching that. Do you have any idea on like what client demand in China would look like as compared to in the past? Any thoughts that we can incorporate into how we do that math?
The one thing, one change is that like lots of like Chinese miners are like moving their machines out of the China, and maybe to like Singapore, and maybe like to Japan or Korea. So, but they still have like clients like from like maybe mainland China, or maybe from like Singapore or Hong Kong, like locally. So maybe like I'm not sure, like maybe we can expand our like business. Data cap applicants outside of China, maybe just the Asia region.
And so like basically merge China with the rest of Asia?
Probably, or I'm not sure.
I agree. Like China region doesn't exist anymore. It should be part of the Asia region, like other places in the world, right?
Yeah.
This was something that was mentioned recently, but like that becomes then a question of how do we count the number of active notaries in a region. And as it is, we have already had a disproportionate number of applying and being selected in certain regions. And so if we say we're only going to allow 7, or I think previously it was 5 with a max of 7 in the case of a tie. If we roll China into other geographic regions, do we double that calculation and say in this one region we'll allow 10, even though in North America we'll only allow 5? Or do we just get rid of that regional calculation entirely and say we'll accept a certain percentage of good applicants? Or are there other ways to like slice that decision? I think the reason for that is we don't want the entire notary community to be heavily weighted by a certain geographic interest or a certain use case or a certain, we want diversity of notaries overall. So it's not just, this isn't the only metric where we're trying to have a balance.
Okay, so by the way, like what's the like original plan for the, I mean, the third application open? So like a different region can have like the number to be added to the other regions. What was the like original plan?
The original plan, so in the second election round, the plan, Deep, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 5 total notaries per region, or 5 per region, with a maximum of 7 per region, because if there is a tie, then we just accept both applicants that have the same score.
Okay.
What we were discussing, which hasn't really been proposed yet, this was just a conversation happening the other day at the summit, is that we increase that number per region. Maybe we increase it to say 7 per region with a maximum of 10 in the event of a tie, in an effort to get a larger notary pool. We still have had, not as many applications. In the second round of election, we didn't have as many applications from Oceania, South America, Africa. So things to consider. If we increase the number of, to 15 per region, and we still don't get any applicants from South America, what do we do with that? I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, I see.
I think the other issue we have right now is like something Charles flagged like a year ago, which we still have not correctly addressed, I think, as a community, which is we still don't have a great solution to people acquiring companies or investing significantly in companies and then claiming like stake and then having like operations that are not in the actual country where like the notary lives. And so we had that in the last election cycle where we had like a notary who claimed to be an NA, but was clearly operating out of a different region. And so ended up like correcting them for the following round. But we should probably have some sort of like statement on like what, like how you can qualify and what region you need to be sort of serving. The other thing is that like in the past, we've seen regions run out of data cap, and we've seen clients in those regions then go to notaries of other regions. And that's generally been okay. Like we had like that massive gap with Europe in the first time that we did notary elections. I think it generally worked out. Like it wasn't that bad. And that's mostly because there wasn't that much of a language barrier in that case. I don't know how like sustainable that is over time, but it seemed to be okay in that case. Thoughts, reactions to that? Or other people that have opinions on this proposal or some ideas?
I don't know. It's like I think actually the cost of election is high. Each time like we have lots of discussions, we need to find out. Due diligence is really important step, and yeah, just like as you mentioned the issue I mentioned last time. Honestly, even myself, I don't know how to like do that. Split is actual like because it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Like, yeah, we can easily find out the problem, but we cannot easily solve it. Kind of due diligence, like, that's like just like a law in Western country, right? Like we know, yeah, something like without that you have that, but we don't have proof, so we cannot arrest you. So something similar like this, and we cannot define, we cannot use using something like the scale of the company or something like to define them, because that's not fair for individual working as a notaries. Yeah, but how to prove they really have the collateral, especially like those from country have governance. Now it become even more difficult for them to show the proof, because like if they reveal that maybe under the governance of their region. Yeah, we need to take more time to think about the due diligence part.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I think there's another angle here where basically we focus more on the, I don't know how to say this. I guess instead of it needing to be the same process for everybody, it's more that like you had a high quality process and you actually stuck to it. So the gap today, I think, is less in notaries, and like a lot of notaries come with a very aggressive plan and then don't execute at that level. So they say they're going to do like, you know, a bunch of things, and then they do like some of those things. And so for me, it's more important that like if they got elected by saying that they're going to do a bunch of things, then they should execute on those things at least. Like we should have like clear audit tracking. Of course, there should be a trail of every client that applied. But beyond that, it's about like setting a high bar and then executing at that bar. I don't think that universally that bar has to be like equal to the execution of like jurisdiction in the region, or like extremely high consistent quality across everybody. I think eventually we need to get there. And I completely agree that it's a complicated and long-term conversation, and there needs to be much more alignment across notaries for that to happen. But in the near term, at least we can enforce execution at the level that you set for yourself as a notary when you got elected. Because when you got elected the first time, you probably set a pretty good bar. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten elected.
Yeah. Another side, like what I suggest, if possible, in next notary meeting, we want to see like how many tools we have been developed and can be used for after the next round of notary elected. For example, the tracking tools, how to use it, develop progress to see if we can like use it in the third round of notary. But now, like I know that lots of notaries set a very quality high bar for themselves, but even myself, like we ignore one fact that we don't have so much time and capability to develop tools by ourselves. Like we can have something like, for example, we can easily see that. So for example, I see like this guy has granted, for example, large data LDN, right? I see this guy granted 200 terabytes. Now he's asking for 400 terabytes. What should I do? I need to do some basic check about so now most of the things we see is like the system developed by foundation or whatever it is. Like we see like you do split it on specific of the numbers of nodes. So we know that you reach that, but the retrieval part, something part, like how the data structure, we don't know that, and we don't have the tool. I mean, we don't even have standard for that. So for example, we frequently can see people like in the comments say that I check this guy, his website cannot open, and his data cannot be retrieved. Like, I'm not saying if this happens, sometimes we cannot give this people opportunities. And also the standard, like it's I give you the opportunity to correct it, then we continue, or we don't even give you opportunities there. And also I get a request from the community asking me, like Charles, yesterday I was in China WeChat group. Yeah. Like they asked me, like Charles, how to apply for the data cap. I put a link, give them. They said, okay, Charles, we know that, but what's the standard? I said, well, there's a general standard. And then how about the notary standard? I said, well, each notary has their own standard. Then this says that it's hard to follow. What does each notary has their own standard? I said, well, there's a general standard, but each notary maybe have their own standard for the data set type, data set type. I cannot give you like a direct specifications, but like you can pass the applications. So those are those things like as a notary, like sometimes we really need some general tools, right? Like this morning, I get a request from Rob. He said he's not be able to get the data cap. Then I use the data cap check tools, found that he didn't have that. Then I doing another signature And frequently people are sending me notification on Slack. So Charles, I want you to sign for me. It's really hard for me, honestly. I really wanted to do something for those guys, but when I check their applications, like the website looks, honestly, like the claims I have 5 petabyte to applications, but when I check website, it's a WordPress. I can create it within 2 days. How can I trust those people?
Yeah.
Do we have a standard for that?
Yes, 1000%. Charles, like this is exactly like we are getting something like 2 large data set client applications a day. And like to go through those as the governance team and check them is exactly what you're talking about, right? This person is saying, I'm storing NFTs. I need 5 petabytes. And here's a website that was made on WordPress or Naver, or here's a
fresh
YouTube
new
channel,
domain, not even
and
HTTPS.
you look up the domain, and it was registered less than 6 months ago, and you're like, I don't have the confidence that you actually are going to have 100 terabytes of NFT data per week.
Yeah,
that you're actually going to do decentralized storage, right? And so that I totally agree with you. Like this is a hard gut check when you look at these and there's not a lot of information. And I agree with you that there are not a lot of consistent tools. And I agree with you that there are not consistent standards across notaries. And so I think these are all the like very good points and problems that we're experiencing. My question to you, just off the cuff, do you think that the foundation and the existing notaries should come up with those standards and tell all of the other notaries, tell the notaries that apply, here's the standard, here's the guidebook for how you do diligence? Or does that defeat the purpose of having decentralized notaries if we're telling them how to do their job? What is your opinion on that?
Honestly, like we can have some flexibility for each notaries, but we should have a general policy, like something like a common sense, right? For example, a guy applied for 5 petabytes. That doesn't show any proof that he has the capability to do the job. He has past experience to do the job. If I'm not a notary, I'm outside of the business, I have sufficient reason to doubt that they are aiming at get a pad and make a profit from it. That's very common sense. And this is how other people outside the community see us. This is not about how we are thinking about ourselves. It's how about others thinking us. Look at this guy, a shitty website, cost below $200, get 100. Let me ask one question. With other computer blockchains, their utility data is only 100 terabytes or 200 terabytes. You, as a one single application, says you will have 5 petabyte NFTs. Where's your past working experience on NFT? Check your website. His link sometimes even out of date, for examples. And they give you a sample. Their sample images quite friendly is saved on Baidu Cloud with a JPEG link. That doesn't prove anything, honestly. If this kind of work approved by notary, I will have sufficient reason to doubt that this notary doesn't have the capability to do the due diligence. Honestly, sorry, I was like, the really very tough conversation, but this is something we have to apply. This is a general rule. When the notary apply for the get elected, they promise that I check all the notary applications. Almost all of them says that they have enough capability to do the due diligence. They will have a check from time to time. They will have like tools development to do so. This is our promise. Have they done that? Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't ask much. Make sure you make the promise and make sure you achieve it. That's it, right? So yeah. This standards, I don't think it's something like about decentralization. This is some common sense. Just like a law that if you kill some people, you should be in charge. This is common sense in every country. It's not about because you are in this country, you are free of charge. No, it's common sense.
Yeah. I think these are all great points. I agree. As a person who reads through a lot of these LDNs and does a first pass at like trying to separate legit ones. I think we do have like one or two other slides to get to, and I would love to like also hear, you know, ongoing opinions and decisions on this. We have a couple of different issues open, and we could also start just a general discussion topic if the issues that are open don't capture this topic well. But I think the next slide is sort of an update on LDNs. Is that right, Karen?
Let's take a look. Yes.
Yes.
Here's our bulk approval announcement.
Yes. Yep. So we have successfully shipped a change to the way that auth happens in the front end. We mentioned this, and we're very excited about this because it will, you know, we have gotten that number of open large data sets. I think it's down to like 20 something large data sets that are waiting for diligence and approvals. You can still open each of the audit trails there to like go into the GitHub issue and ask these questions, you know, and say like, you're asking for 200 tebibytes here. You already got 100 tebibytes, but you didn't really, you know, use it in a decentralized way. I'm not sure that you need 200 tebibytes yet. Prove, you know, whatever. Ask the question and let the client defend themselves and justify their use case. But we, yeah, just wanted to flag that we got some like good feedback from notaries, Meg and Pipebase on this issue, as well as like Danny from the foundation, and we did some screen sharing and worked with the Kiko team to change how this auths. We've also gotten feedback that it would be nice to know if there is one of these large data sets that has a pending approval and you were the one who signed it, to pull that so that you don't get an error. So we're working on that with the team. And I think there's one more announcement for K-Ray. Any questions on this registry improvements before we jump into that? Okay. Great, awesome. K-Ray?
Yeah, just a quick friendly update and congratulations to Alexandre who's on the call. Might be having some audio, but if you could hear us, we're looking forward to great things. So Andre applied for the RFP that was open to take a look at how we can take some of the deliverables on what you're doing and put it into like a scoreboard where we kind of have like, hey, this person is just really, really crushing it. So the RFP was written about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had it open for community discussion, and then Alexander wrote in with his proposal. The grant's still in like the final legal paperwork phase of it, but I think Alexander is already like starting to crack the whip on his like web development skills to get that front and center. So big round of congratulations. We have the link there if you want to read about it. We also have the deliverables here, but it's essentially taking that dashboard that we show in metric 4 of this presentation and making it really beautiful and display and kind of laid out how the program is running and how the notaries are participating in it. So we're looking for great things. This is just the first update to come. Once that grant gets fully approved and Alexandria's off to the races, we should start to see some milestones come through in the next couple of weeks. So if you see them on Slack or the call, just kind of look for updates to come on that. So looking forward to great things. Thanks, Alexandria. Now, I know that we have about 5-6 minutes left. We see that there's a couple questions left. So this is time, if there's anything that you wanted to flag from earlier in the call or bring up those discussions. So. I'll hand it over to you guys.
Next week.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.
I'd actually love to hear a little bit more about this like grouping of China with the rest of Asia for notary operations and for like general like client applications and stuff. for those of you, I know we have a couple of the notaries on this call that are based in Asia and China right now. Like, what do you folks think of that? Like, does that make sense, or doesn't make sense? Like, what are you seeing in terms of the demand that's coming in?
Oh, but I just one small question. Like, how is the like overall applications from like Asian region, like non GCR?
There's definitely some. They're mostly coming in through Korea, and then there's like every now and then like some in Japan and Singapore. But that's pretty much it. I would say the volume is probably an order of magnitude below like what China used to be. Like I don't know looking forward what it's going to be like. But we're also seeing a lot of entities that used to make deals in China are also shifting their approach.
Deep, are you saying that the client volume?
Yes.
Or yeah. I think just to make sure, yeah, we have gotten a handful of notary applications in the past like year that have come in unsolicited just because the GitHub issue is still there. But we have just been sort of telling people we're not really ready or open yet. So I don't know that we can say we have how many how many notary applications we have gotten for those different regions in exclusion of GCR. But to Deep's point, the client volume, people requesting data cap, I can speak from the large data sets. We are definitely seeing an uptick of large data sets, clients based in Korea, specifically.
Okay.
And so. I think another question that we have is like, you guys are all existing notaries and community members. Like, what are some thoughts on how we solicit other notaries and bring new people to the table in these regions? Any ideas on like an industry or a type of client or a type of notary that we should be trying to attract and where we would go find them?
Well, actually, like one of the company we are trying to invest, like in Japan, PL is want to invest as well to expand the Filecoin business to the Japan region, and typically about NFT. That's something you guys are already working on right now, and we are also doing that as well. And maybe I'm not sure, like maybe like from like Vietnam or some other region, like they're like having like booming requirement on gamify, on NFTs, and maybe that's something like the whole community or maybe like PL can work on together.
I was one thing like about NFTs. Like I recently downloaded some NFT data from Ethereum blockchain and trying to migrate it to the Filecoin network. And I just want to really understand. Well, if we get some information, I will be interested to know how those NFTs, which kind of NFT will be bigger, which kind of NFT will be small, and in which cases it will be suitable for the Filecoin application, because like Filecoin really need like ecosystem projects. So very interesting to see how they're performing and fit the system.
Also, one thing I want to add is like as you guys know, like FVM is coming up, right? And like maybe like in QQ2, like in full function, and that might bring lots of like requirements, maybe on data cap. So I mean, like as because I'm like I'm in working as an investment manager at Fembushi, and I have a lot of conversation with different like projects that trying to use Filecoin, and that they actually have no idea on like they didn't know about the large data cap program. So I like frequently refer them to that, say that like your blockchain project actually like fits the need of like large data cap projects. And so after the launching of the FVMN, that might be a plus to the whole ecosystem maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like what are the resources that are actually helpful for them, or what are the ones that have not been helpful? Like it would also be good to pass on feedback to some of the content creating teams. I think it would be pretty productive if you have any specific feedback, or yeah, both in terms of what you send them to or what they enjoy using or learning from.
I mean, like some of the, there are like, so for example, like enterprise level, storage, SaaS projects that they just use Filecoin, and maybe not only Filecoin, they use IPFS using SIA storage as one of the like storage options. And like lots of data they are trying to store actually fits the need of LDN, but they actually don't know anything about the LDN program. So I'm not sure, like maybe some education.
Education part like actually like can be part of the bounty program. Like Vanessa, Stefan, they have bounty program for education, those kind of stuff. So it can be part of those applications.
You mean in terms of putting a bounty for like writing like a guide or tutorial, basically?
Or something like training how to apply for LDN and what's the most important things about LDN. Those can be part of the bounty program for
that makes sense.
Stefan and Vanessa. Their team can working on that.
Oh, definitely worth checking out for us, Kerry Gillen.
Yeah,
I think other than that, like
I can talk to them because I was participating in those meetings, so I can like
great.
the issues there.
Fantastic. Yeah, that would be great. I think the other thing that I was going to call is we actually push some changes to README for the LDN as well recently, finally. So hopefully it gets a little bit better for some of the clients coming in. Awesome. Well, I know we're a little over time now. Anything else, Kerry, before we wrap up?
All right, one more suggestion. So if the training held by the Stephen or Vanessa, if for Chinese market, I do suggest we have the Chinese to give the training. Otherwise, only a few people can make the training understand.
No problem. I'm here. I'll make sure that there will be a Chinese version, and we can working with you guys as well if you are interested. Because just for the bounty program is the open bounty, so everybody can apply as like to win the bid. Then like you have a choice to be one of the winner to do the job. So basically like that. So everybody have the opportunity if you want to contribute.
It's great.
Yeah, it's true.
Good feedback.
I also made a lot of clients ask me how to get a data cap, how to have the LDN on the Slack in Chinese. And then I passed the GitHub link for them. Okay, they say, okay, I cannot understand, so then I give up. Something like that. So maybe GitHub is not a best platform for each country's people to apply for the LDN, for data cap, frankly speaking.
You wanted to create a WeChat small program for them to click and become a rapper to submit the application to GitHub. That will be interesting to have that kind of tool. I know in China, everybody using WeChat to do everything.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I'm not opposed. Like, if WeChat can be built to like take a form submission and create a GitHub issue.
They can do that. They can do that.
Yeah.
It's a micro grant, a $5,000 micro grant. They can apply for that to create those kind of small program to do the application. Maybe somebody will approve. I don't know. I'm not in charge of approval.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. But then we need it needs to be worth it, right? Like we need to know that there's going to be client demand coming in China. The other thing we're learning on this call is that that's
another team's work. How to approve it is not our team's work. It's the other team.
I know, but what is demand?
Work. Yeah.
What does demand forecasting look like for us to choose to prioritize this? Like that's where we need input. copy, especially from you. You know, you have a very good pulse on, or Eric even on like what's happening in China and what we're expecting in terms of client demand. Is it even worth investing in things like that right now for our community?
Yes.
All right. We're at time.
All right,
Kevin,
I'm going
wrap
to
us up.
stop the recording. I'm going to play that Kenny G Going Home song. Stop recording. All right. Hello, everybody, to the second portion of the January 25th, 26th, depending on your time zone, Notary Governance call. We are kicking off on this recorded line. If you're watching on YouTube, you have just watched the first hour and you forward to this. For everybody that's joining the call, thank you for coming on. And here's a quick overview, what we're going to kind of talk about today. The first is the metrics, just kind of a quick check-in on what we're seeing with some stats, some root key holders to sign, just kind of a check-in on the foundations. We're going to spend a lot of our time talking about the Notary Election upcoming, flagging the dates, some changes to the scoring rubric, and just getting any input you may have as a community about how this should be run effectively going forward. And we're going to highlight some quality of life improvements and say some thank yous, and then leave it open for anything that you may want to talk about, since this is all of our time as we go forward. Just as a quick reminder, if this is your first time coming onto the call, Deep, Galen, Kevin, we are kind of your team to support you as we go forward. Here for whatever you need. We're in the Slack, kind of be the MCs to walk you through this. But again, feel free to interrupt and add any comments you may have as we dive onto that. If this is your first time on the call or you're a guest joining us, we do attach these call logs into YouTube, so it is really effective if you could just say a quick hi in the Slack, or if you were new and you were just kind of trying to get more of a feel of what the program's all about, this is a great time just to say a friendly hello. I'm from this part of the world. I love Protoss, but not Zerg. Whatever you want to say, we're not going to put you in a box, but do take a moment and say hello in that chat. So with that, let's take a quick look at where our metrics stand since last week. I'm really juiced about this. We started calling out on the left-hand side is, are we getting better? Or are we getting worse? And so average time to data cap is exactly the same as it was. Go figure on that. And so what's nice about that is after the holidays and after all the LDN shuffle, it's essentially just saying that that ops tempo is just about the same as we've gone forward, no more, no less, which is kind of par for the course. Our average time to first response is still around the same. I mean, if it's 1 hour out of a 5-day road trip, that's not really that much of a change. So we're also still right on course as we've been doing it, and we've added 1.3 petabytes onto the network since the last time we went on. So if you were just to look at this slide, if you were the first time coming, this information comes from this File Plus Interplanetary Stats. You can feel free to click that link as you go through it. And essentially, not a whole lot of changes week to week as we go over it. If you have any questions on those, or you want to see more information, just type it into chat. Feel free to interrupt. We'll kind of go forward as it. Now, as far as calling out some notary activity, this slide is just a great call to arms. These are the key holder multi-sig requests that are waiting in the Notary Governance repo. But kind of draw your eyes to the chart on the left. This is kind of the foundation of what activity is taking place within the community. So you can see the amount of granted applications that were provided by each of the notaries here with their handle, and then the time that those notaries took to kind of get in there. I see that Galen has a handout. I'll finish this, and then Galen, you probably want to comment on this multi-sig. So, and then with this dashboard, we're going to talk more at the end of this call about the leaderboard coming, but essentially what that leaderboard is going to be doing is taking a lot of this information, these times, this grant, and then putting it in one big place. Galen, do you want to piggyback off the multi-sigs or anything on this?
Yep. I was just going to call out the 7 multi-sig requests that are waiting. Those are new multi-sigs that are waiting for root key holders that have been approved by governance and making their way through. If you want to get a jump on diligence and looking into those, you can. I just pulled up the registry app, and it looks like there are 21 large data sets that are open for notaries to go approve allocations. So 7 new that are going to be coming soon, 21 that are currently open, and then a number of the direct notary ones. So good stuff.
Yeah, good call. All right. So last call on January 11th, 12th, depending on your time zone, we kind of floated this for feedback, and that was the exact dates that we would open up the third round of notary elections. Based off feedback on the call and no significant issues, we made this repo to kind of make it more formal. What we're floating is this. On January 21st, about 3 or 4 weeks from now, the applications open up. So you have 2 weeks to review, take your time and put together your packet, and then turn it in the repository under the new applications. And we'll talk about that more if this is your first time. After that 2-week collection period from March 7th to 18th, we'll be doing the scoring. And we'll talk a lot about scoring on this call, how the process works, and the feedback we're looking for. And during that time, we may ask for more additional clarifications. So if there was part of your application that was missing or we needed more guidance on, we'll ping you in that 2-week period for any more information we need. And then on March 22nd, we'll announce the winners or the elected officials, however we're going to deem it, for this third round of notary elections. So if you have any input or you want to share it, feel free to direct message it right there in the text, or more appropriately, if you see this link, feel free to kind of come on there and quote it. I'm going to pause for a minute just for anyone on the call if you had any feedback on these dates. That's great. If you change your mind and you want to add anything, by all means, or if you're watching this recording and you want to kind of come back, remember this link is issue 392 in the governance repo. That'll take you back. So with that, let's take a look at what are some of the proposals for the scoring in this new round of election that's coming up. So here's the first one. It's issue 391. And what this has to deal with is how the scoring is weighing engagement within the community. So if you click on this link, and we might just drop it here in chat for you. Oh, sorry, let me get you back. It's that right now on the second round of elections, that scoring repo, we based participation on the scale of allocation, the amount of data that was being actually approved and notarized and reviewed. And after some kind of feedback from the community and looking at how we can make this program more effective, what we're proposing is that notaries are kind of based off engagement like a standard SLA would be. And that's responding to issues on Slack, attending some of these governance calls or watching them for awareness. It's the number of participations that are called out. So less the amount of data and more actually looking at their participation. So this change was submitted and it's in the repo right now. And what this will look at is how much time you would actually spend working on the Filecoin Plus program. So when you're filling out your application, if you're only going to spend around 30 minutes, you would just say, hey, I'm a level 1. I might check in for 5 minutes every day or so. I might watch some of this recording that you guys are doing. I maybe check Slack, but I'm not going to check it very often. That's a level 1. And as you can see, these level 2s get more and more engaged. So if you be the kind of participant in the program where if we message you, we know we're going to hear back from you same day, that you'll be attending these calls, and you can list out that participation and really kind of get that points on the rubric for how much you're going to be involved. Again, this is a change. Last time we did a just amount of data, so this is kind of a change to how we're looking at that participation. So again, we're going to kind of pause the talk, open it up for any kind of community thoughts you may have to share on this. Hey, anything comes up, you know where to find us. And again, that repo is open. Feel free to add anything. So this isn't the only change we proposed for the metrics for the scoring rubric. The next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Kadeem, who's going to talk to you about the second round of feedback for the scoring.
Thanks, Gary. So there's two other things that I wanted to propose as changes to how we do scoring for incoming notary applications. The first of which is significantly simpler. This is issue 393. It's very basic usability and quality of life improvements to the rubric. So it's mostly just typos that have been fixed and reordering of a couple of rows to enhance the readability of it. And then a couple of the columns where criteria needed to be shifted to a right cell, for example. So like there's some cases where the L5 criteria are the same as L4, and so we just moved it to the 5 column because that's the score that people will be getting. And so I highly recommend taking a look at that. It should be extremely non-controversial, and give me a thumbs up on GitHub that you've seen it and it makes sense. If you have any questions about it, also feel free to let me know, but I expect that one is a pretty basic one. The next one is significantly more complicated. So this is issue 394. And so this issue sort of deals with the formula that's actually used in the spreadsheet to generate a score for the rubric. And that's actually the score that drives like everything, right? That's the scoring that we do that results in somebody getting a position as a notary or not. And so the current function is it takes the min of 2 factors. The first factor is a weighted average of track record, notary leveling, and concreteness of allocation plan. And the second factor is a scale of allocation factor. And so for the first factor, it currently takes 50% of the prior track record, 30% of weighted notary leveling. So weighted notary leveling, for those of you that aren't as familiar, is basically the set of like intro questions that we ask of every notary that allows us to establish that they have some sort of reputation in the ecosystem. So that's basically like, you know, they're in protocol reputation, they're in network reputation, like where they're based, what their background is, what their long-term alignment with the network is, for etc. And the concreteness of allocation plan, which is how are they planning to actually give data cap to clients? How are they going to audit, like keep an audit trail, bookkeeping, things like that. And then scale of allocation is the second factor, which is the function takes the min of, which is just literally how much data cap do you want to give out as a notary. So the problem actually this function has a couple of problems with it. The first is because the second factor is just scale of allocation, it creates an incentive for applying notaries to just put a really high target of data cap that they want to give out, thereby like, you know, even potentially compromising on the quality of the work just to attempt to hit like larger numbers of data cap because that impacts their ability to become a notary. So that's not super great because you just get a lot of applicants that are like, oh yeah, I want to give out 10 Pebby bytes, and obviously they're not going to get it. And so it just ends up being kind of meaningless in the application process. The second is that like track record, which is basically just whether or not like a notary has performed well in the past, is not given like due weight here. Because effectively, if a notary has been a notary in the past and has done like a phenomenal job, then they still have to go through this flow, and there's still a substantive chance of them not becoming elected as a notary again. And for a program that's trying to grow, trying to keep engaged notaries continually engaged and give them the leverage to participate in the community actively, I think that whatever scoring function we use should also like give them the benefit of basically continuing to provide for the community and provide their services to the growth of the overall network. And so the weightage of 50%, in my opinion, is kind of low. And so I basically offer an alternative, which we'll just take a look at. The loss is that the concreteness of allocation plan is only weighted at 20%. I think this is bad because over time, you know, we're all working towards having more notaries, and we're also working towards better upfront KYC, more due diligence in the case of fraudulent action. And so having a high quality and a high standard for the information that notaries are collecting about clients and making that available through a clear audit trail will become important in the long-term success of the program. And so ensuring that like notaries are incentivized to do a really good job with setting up what their plans are and then execute on them is super important to the long-range success of them as individuals, as notaries, but also the success of the program. And so I wanted to find some way to weigh that more. And so these three like core sort of problems are like things that I'd like to propose a solution for. And so if you scroll down, Kerry, I proposed a new formula that we could use in place of the existing formula. And so I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on this. So if you just take a look, the main formula, there's a few differences. The first is basically that we are adjusting the weight of the concreteness of the allocation plan like by 2x. So I'm proposing that we do a 40% weight as opposed to 20% weight, which now makes it the most important factor in consideration for that like first factor in like the min function, which as you'll see has been turned into a max function as well. The second change is that we swap the scale of allocation with the track record. And then the third is we switch the function from a min to a max. So what this actually means is that we benefit notaries greatly if they've been shown to have really good performance and very high compliance with their application. So if they show a really good track record, then it gives them a very high probability of continuing to serve as a notary without needing to go through the coin flip or the dice roll that comes with like a notary application process. Because effectively, if they've done a really good job, they should be able to continue doing a good job at that same magnitude based on how the rubric works. So for those of you that don't know, the weighted notary leveling actually has an output which sets the maximum data cap that can be given to an individual. And so track record is a proxy of that as well. So a notary typically gets between 10 PB and 1 PB of data cap. So you have notaries that get 10 PB, some get 100, and then some get a single PB. And so track record says that, you know, this notary has in the past allocated at the similar magnitudes at a very high degree of quality and standard. And so notaries that do end up using up most of their data cap or giving out their data cap and complying with their bookkeeping plan have very high standard of due diligence and execution of the network and are engaged with the community are rewarded for it and are long-term incentivized to continue performing at a high level. And we reduce the variance that's created by notary election cycles for them so they can continue serving as a notary consistently. And so I think that this function much better aligns with where the network is right now and where the program is within the network right now. I don't think it's necessarily like an ideal long-term function for the math, but given where the rubric is at and how we're collecting information about notary applicants today, I think this is a much better way to identify network like guardians in notaries that are likely to serve clients coming in. We'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on this. I think that there's definitely a couple of risks here where notaries that earn trust can also abuse trust over time, and so we're rewarding people a lot more for earning trust. And there's also an opportunity here for us to like really define as a community what it means to have a good track record as a notary. So like, what does it actually mean to build a reputation as a high quality notary? Does that include responsiveness? Does that include TTD or time to first response for a client application, or your reachability on Slack? Your availability on these calls and things like that. And so I would love to also hear your thoughts. I know we've got a lot of people in the room. It'd be great to hear from you on if you have any immediate reactions to this, or if you want to hop in on GitHub and engage there. But yeah, would love to see if we can have some sort of improved function, at least in the next few weeks for this round of notary election, so that we can more adequately identify notaries that can continue serving the network long term. So I went on for a fair bit there, talked a lot. Hopefully some of it made sense. Quiet room. Any thumbs? Any thoughts? Danny looks very pensive.
I just want to like echo, you know, we have a number of people here, including, you know, clients that have done direct allocations and large data sets. We have people that are applying to be notaries. We have existing notaries that function as part of an organization that want to potentially return as a notary. So this impacts a lot of you. So it would be great to, you know, hear or see some of the comments. If there's something that we're missing in this calculation, or in some way we are, you know, there's a concern that we're going to deprioritize a certain behavior and miss out on either, you know, bringing new people to the table or rewarding our returning notaries, please, you know, crunch these numbers with us and jump in on these GitHub issues and let us know.
Last time the notaries were mainly like from enterprises. I wonder if that has changed to allow individuals, I mean, like myself, to be able to apply for notaries.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good point, Faye. The reason for that is because reputation in the network was established much more easily from people that had been participating as organizations in like Filecoin IPFS for a while, right? So a lot of people claimed long-term network alignment by being part of an organization that had a lot of Fil, or by being part of an influential organization that had contributed, you know, security fixes or code or products in the ecosystem over a period of a year plus. So they scored a little bit higher because of that. And that tended to be the main differentiating factor, because your allocation plan and your strategy can be just as good as somebody applying from like a company with a massive backing, but you're not going to have as much of a leveling score. And so I think that this formula actually benefits an individual a little bit because it adds a little bit more weight to the allocation plan side of things. So if you have a really stellar plan for how you execute as an individual, it supports that as opposed to diminishes the impact that it has. Additionally, with the change that Kire is suggesting, where instead of looking at scale of allocation, which is effectively meaningless, we instead look at engagement in program as a factor. We get to find people who are incentivized and program aligned, which then again favors like an individual who has the time to be here, regardless of whether or not they're part of a big organization. But I think the biggest thing that makes a difference is just how many notaries we select. And I think one thing that we've definitely been thinking about is like scaling the program up. Like over the last 3 months or so, we've all been talking about how we want more data cap to go out, faster responsiveness, more activity in the program, more availability for clients to be served quickly, and improvements to the client experience. And so I do think we should be thinking about expanding like the amount of notaries. Like from the first set of notaries, there was like 11 or 12. Now there's like 23 or so. I think it's quite reasonable for us to take another leap here. And I think that's going to end up being like ultimately the most influential like thing when it comes to whether or not you can get elected as a notary. I also think that in general, as a community, we are starting to trend more towards giving people a chance and watching how they like perform in the network. Like our whole client philosophy is changing to be like this as well, right? Where we're talking about like, okay, just trend towards bias for action, tend towards giving clients data cap and looking at how they perform in the network. And I don't think it'll be that different for notaries. Like it'll be easier for us, I think, with this rubric to start to take a chance on individual notaries, even if it's with a lower data cap allocation. At least those notaries can participate in the LDN process and over time can earn reputation and prove that they're worthy notaries over time.
Jumping in, I think Danny had a hand, and I think we've only got him for a few more minutes, so we need to hear what he had to say.
Actually, I was making a bunch of sort of naive questions, which is, so does the allocation to notaries have a time limit? Is it cumulative, or does it evaporate at the end of their initial election period?
So what we have done historically is that if you are, say someone applied in election round 2 and they still have an amount of data cap now as we are going into this third election, if they are still an active notary, then they don't necessarily need to reapply if they want to just run out the data cap that they have. If they want more data cap, they would need to reapply under the new kind of terms and be weighted as such. If they are inactive and they have not been allocating their data cap, then we may, and we're kind of looking at what defining inactive mean and some different proposals around that to basically come in and say, you know, we're going to clean up the books a little bit. This person hasn't been active by these metrics. We gave them this warning. We're going to revoke their notary status. And if they want to apply in the future, they can.
And do you think it makes sense to, so I don't have a great like model. You clearly have been thinking about this a lot, but is there any thought about trying to calibrate these allocations to what we see people actually spending over time? Or do you see what I mean? Not per person, but like if we go, oh, actually we're giving people too much data cap because actually it's taking them 6 months or 12 months to spend that. I may have missed that, sorry.
This gets into like, how quickly do we think we need to do election round number 4? And then it gets into the ongoing question of like, do we even need to have these punctuated election cycles, or can we just have rolling admissions?
Right.
And what does top up look like? And this starts to get into some other like programmatic question changes where, you know, what would it look like to remove some of the strict amounts? You know, instead a notary is a notary and they just have a faucet of data cap, and as long as they are within a threshold, they have that faucet, instead of us saying, well, Danny gets, you know, X and, you know, Meg gets 2X. You know, instead we treated them more like the way we had allocations with the LDN. So there's a couple different ideas there. that we've bandied about. But I think as it is for the scale of where we are, we've only had a number of notaries, run out. And we do kind of want to, I think we're somewhere like 70 or 80% of the amount that has been given to notaries has now been given to clients, I think, which, is like a good time to do another election cycle, right? So,
right. So do the folks at PL who are kind of working on the crypto economics of the whole network, do they have any feelings or thoughts about this? Does the amount of data cap that we create kind of from thin air a little bit affect the network as a whole, or is there some freedom there, or do they not play a part in this? Deep, I guess this is a question for you.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. And yeah, I think the answer is that it definitely does make a difference. It definitely impacts how the crypto economics of the network work. The inflection point was effectively that like 10% of the entire network's byte power is available as data cap, because then effectively you have like the same amount in qualified or quality adjusted like power as opposed to like what's available in the network. And so we're nowhere close to that right now, because we're like still talking about hundreds of pebibytes. Like our targets are like 500-ish pebibytes or 1,000-ish pebibytes, and then the network is like 15 exabytes. And so we're getting to the point where we should think about that, but I don't think this next cycle is impacted. It's more along what Galen is saying, where next or marginal upcoming changes will probably require this kind of thinking, both from a crypto economic, but also from a community governance standpoint. And so I think once we get through this election cycle, we had an action item anyway to start kicking off a bunch of discussions, both with the crypto economic side of the house, but also with all of you guys in terms of how you thought about the dynamics.
I got to go, but as ever, this seems very well thought out, and you should view my silence as assent at all times. That goes for all of us.
Made it.
Not really. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah. Well, so those two issues are there. There's a number of issues around this election cycle that we'll be posting, and then kind of we'll keep doing as much as we can to like keep everybody up to date on the timeline, the process, the issues that are open, when those issues are closing, how we roll the elections forward. It's a lot of moving parts, but we appreciate the patience and we don't want anyone to feel left out of the process. We are going to jump forward. I think the next slide there is just kind of a update that we got some help with the Kiko team, as well as some notaries, including Meg, who's here to help us test this. Some improvements to the front end app that will help with large data set signing. We kind of discussed these before, but at this time, you do not need to re-auth for every multi-sig that you are a part of. When you sign into the app with your ledger, it checks the ledger address that you are using against all of the pending multi-sigs to see if you are available on that, so that you can go through and do the diligence and then pop back over and kind of queue up a number of messages. So hopefully this helps speed that process up. There are some additional improvements that we're working with them on an issue. Again, Meg, thank you for bringing up around if you were the person who already proposed it and it has one, approval count, to not let you attempt to send a second, approval when you were already a signer. So we're working on that improvement. Stay tuned, but trying to make these incremental changes for the sort of quality of life user experience for the notaries, to help make that not the part that slows you down, and instead you can focus on the actual diligence aspect of it, on whether or not you have faith and confidence in allocating that amount of data cap. Great. Hey, Ray. Or I guess actually any questions or comments on that? I didn't see any hands. Cool. Yes. Okay, Ray.
Yeah, sweet. Meg, who's on the call, I just want to say a big thank to you. Meg just joined a line with us, gave her time to kind of give feedback on this, test it out. It just went a long way, and it was just a good representation of like aiding the community. So Meg, I just wanted to give you another thank you for taking the time on that. We have good news. So we put out an RFP a few weeks ago, and this was for the Notary Leaderboard. And this was that slide I showed, I think it was on slide 6, where you could see just essentially what's going on in the community. So some of the deliverables were on the right, like the ability to rank attributes of like LDN stats, community participation. And we got a response back from a very well-qualified individual, Alexandre. He was on the call this morning to just say hello, give one of those emoji waves, but he is already at work to start scoping the data sets and build the front-end UI. This will be a public-facing website where you can essentially see a leaderboard of everyone who's participating as a notary in the program. It's designed to foster that healthy communication, make sure that we're all on the same page with expectations, and just have a visual check-in of what's in the system and who's rocking it down. So if you see him on Slack or you see some updates to come, this is what it will be speaking to, and we're really excited about this getting up. And the whole project, we have it slated to take a couple of weeks of development. So hopefully right as the election cycle is coming to an end, we'll have this to coincide with that welcoming third round of notaries joining the community. So Alexandre, thank you if you're watching this. Looking forward to great things. With this, I'm going to hand it back to Deep, Galen, and the community for any open issues we want to discuss.
We've got several clients on the line that are interested in sharing more about their backgrounds and their projects. So I'd love to hand it over to the team from Meta CNC because they reached out to us to see if they could have a slot here. So yeah, like over to you. Stage is yours.
Hi, my name is Hillary. I'm the director of Meta CNC, and we're the subsidiary company of Meta Blockchain. I'm pretty sure you guys are all familiar with Meta Blockchain. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Let me share the slide. No, not yet. Can I share the slide?
Yeah, absolutely. We can give you rights to do that.
Okay.
Carrie, we might need you to do it.
Hillary, you should have the ability to share. If you don't, just feel free to drop the link in chat and I'll re-engage. But you should have the ability to share screen right now.
Okay, yeah, I'm in the process. Okay. Is it shared? Can you all see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
It's loading for us now.
We're Meta CNC, and we're in the process of getting ourselves ready to provide cloud service for our clients. Once again, we're a subsidiary company of Meta Blockchain. We're planning to offer a cloud service for companies, and we're aiming to make a cloud service that support global backups. And we do have our customers' data currently. They're open, public, verifiable, and we do store their data upon their request. And we do have our own IDCs, two separate IDCs in Seoul. And we have storage of our own, and we're making 4 or more replicas of our clients' data by using data cap. And here's the picture of our current IDCs. And currently, many of our client companies don't know how to apply for large data cap and store their data into IPFS Filecoin storage. They think it's just too complicated. And they do believe IPFS protocol and want to store their data into IPFS server. That's why we're planning to agent clients and miners by using data cap. We'll store our clients' data into the system, but at the same time, we'll make 4 or 5 or more replicas of data and store it in each continent SPs. And currently we have clients in the medical field, eye doctors, hospitals, clinics, research documents, and law firms. Have clients from artistic field, arts and music, and educational companies, and all the educational videos, and even K-pop companies. You know, people are crazy about BTS. They're making music videos and music clips and everything. We have more than 20 of our secured customers from each area. And here's our client side. And they're gonna be able to pick 4 or more continents to store their data. They can retrieve their data from any continent they want. And here's the example of our cloud service registration. And they're gonna have to fill out all these infos. And here comes the business plan. Our business plan is to gather SPs in each continent. And our clients get to apply for nodes, and we get their data and we spread them and make replicas of data and spread through whole continents here. And we make a global backup available. And here's the application form that we're currently using for storage service node. And here's the infrastructure, pre-built infrastructure, 2 IDCs in Seoul. We've got over 20 nodes to be used as cloud storage, and we're expecting capacity of 10 petabytes. And currently we're actively communicating with our clients. We do have chat channel to provide client management and service. We do have the whole entire team to provide data supply, storing, and retrieve system. And we're currently building up our website. And here's the chat channel that you're looking at. And currently we're needing more infrastructure, which is data cap, to distribute replica of customers' data into 4 or more continents, like I said. And we're currently gathering our clients' continents SPs worldwide. So if you have any further question or comments, concerns, any thoughts, you're more than welcome to communicate on Slack through Lizzie or Ember or me. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for presenting. I think I had three questions that came up for me as you were running through. Like the first, do you foresee any sort of copyright or intellectual property issues with the name Meta and the logo due to sort of the recent, very small Silicon Valley startup that has changed its name to be somewhat similar?
I know the word meta itself, it means virtual transcendence. Even Facebook, changed their name to Meta. We were thinking of having our company name as Meta, and having the infinity shape. And I know, but if any issues come up or if there's any problem with that, we're willing to, take action upon it.
Okay, great. And then I put 2 other questions in the chat. Sorry, I didn't fully flesh out ideas. But when you mention, that you're going to be sourcing medical data, music video data, and then helping these clients that have and own that data, with the large data set process and data cap, right now it is for public open data. Will those, I know in the United States, for example, like music videos and the access to them and ownership and rights are things that are maintained by copyright, and people, if you pirate a music video illegally, the studio can come after you. are these videos, medical data, are all of these things going to be, how are you going to guarantee the sort of public data set for that kind of client data? And we can also do this async. I know we only have like a limited amount of time if we want to like have these conversations back and forth in the GitHub issue as well.
Sure.
So that was one. And then the other question that I had, just to get it out there, was around, you mentioned like partnering with other storage providers. I wonder if you already have a list of who those storage providers are and kind of what the relationship is, sort of, you know, I think that will help, because one of the major concerns with the large data set process is around preventing a storage provider from being a client and self-dealing the data cap only with their own storage provider, with their own minor IDs or their own kind of services. Because we want, the whole vision is that those are public, distributed, decentralized data sets. And so having some additional information or evidence around who those other storage provider entities are. Those are my questions. But
currently, we have other continent storage provider. It's a team from Canada. Their team name is Canada's Fil and they said they're already interested through Slack. We've been communicating very actively on Slack with the team.
Yeah, we know Fil that'd be great. Information like that in your GitHub large data set application will help like provide more understanding and context. So
yeah, sure. If we need to prove our integrity, we're more than willing to take audit. If any step is necessary, then yeah, please let us know. Yeah, to prevent self-deal, we'll transparently open our recruitment. We're willing to do that.
Awesome. Those were my questions. Were there other notaries or groups that had questions for Meta CNC?
Come again?
I was just going to see if anyone else on the call had other questions.
Oh, sorry.
I guess my question is around your timeline, like when are you planning to launch right now, and how, like the clients that you're already communicating with, how fast do you expect to onboard data onto the network?
Maybe in the middle of February.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, cool. And then, well, thanks to the Meta CNC team and Hillary for coming to the call. Really appreciate it. I think we've got a couple other folks too. Carrie flagged that we've got a couple other client IDs that are familiar from GitHub.
Yeah, this is kind of like fresh. Hillary, thank you so much for leading this off. I recognize some names. Maybe just, you guys are comfortable, new members on the call. Jacintos, you want to say hi, introduce yourself? David, Gary?
Hello, everyone. I'm Gary. I'm from IBG Capital.
Love it. Thanks. Is this your first time on the call, or have you been on a couple more?
Okay, maybe this is my second time.
Outstanding. Thanks for coming. Do you have any questions for us? Anything we could flag for you?
This is okay for my today.
All right. Sounds good. Jacintos, do you want to say hi? We got a Slack from David. I hear you on that train, so we'll just give you that. If anybody else wants to unmute and say hi, Hillary, thanks for leading the charge on that. I think that was really good and brings a lot. So I appreciate you taking the bull by the horns on that, as we say out here. Deep, Galen, is there anything else that you might want to flag, or is there any open discussion? Otherwise, turn it over.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. Just last chance if anybody had any thoughts to the issues that we flagged. Meg, you're one of the last notaries left on the call at the moment. If you've got any opinions on the scoring process, please feel free to share. And yeah, if there's anybody else that wants to chat through anything. All right, looks like you're all good in chat. Awesome. Yeah, I guess last go around, 30 seconds. Anybody wants to say anything? Now's your chance.
All good, I think, too.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.